I actually wanted to start out by giving a shout out for all the youth that made themselves available for WILD10. I couldn't have put up my exhibit without the volunteers' help, and they don't give the hope for tomorrow, they actually do so for today. So truly a round of applause for all the volunteers who are here. There was also a quick way to make sure this entire audience was actually awake, because I know I'm the last speaker of the panel. And the thing is, I actually am a creative conservationist that saves all the backslashes that she just mentioned, artist, backslash, writer, backslash, you know. And what I do is essentially lend a visual voice to conservation agendas around the world. It's essentially combining two careers that offer possibly the lowest job security and completely inconsistent pay, and trying to make that a full-time career, which is why this is the face of sleep deprivation. But, you know, you can't part-time doing good for the world, because it is a full-time investment, and doing the right thing should be lucrative for all of us, and that's why we're all here, to build these partnerships and alliances. And so what I essentially do is kind of tell stories of our time, and I guess I should start flipping my slideshow with this. Am I doing this wrong? Oh. Oh.
Try this one.
Oh, cheers. Pointing it up there? Okay, cheers. Oh, there we are. So this is where it all began for me. I started because of the BP oil spill. Up until then, I had a rather diverse background and careers. I was in fashion for a good long while, and then I did branding and marketing, and prior to that, I was in science. So completely unrelated fields, but I combined everything that I knew how to do and that I was interested in, and I kind of forged my own path. So this one shows, you know, how we fuel life with death, and I've told various stories in various ways. A lot of them have overlapping themes and tend to converge, and so that also kind of paints a picture as to how complex these issues are. So we're not here to address things in a linear manner. We're trying to work together to address everything simultaneously and cumulatively. Because in the end of the day, we're not here in the age of independence. We're here to celebrate and embrace interdependence. And if you really think about it, what's mine, what's yours, what's ours, we all orbit the same sun. We're all here in it together in one planet to which there's no planet B. So these were all done over the past 2 years when I was focused more on marine issues and plastic waste. But this year has been entirely dedicated to two campaigns that began this year, which was with rhinos and elephants. Hold on, I'll go to that slide next. And so I created two campaigns in December, and that pretty much kickstarted this kind of deluge into the world of the trade of ivory and rhino horn, and every campaign I've created since has been about these two issues. And I realized that the same topic can be conveyed to the public in so many interesting ways that the story is never fully told, and you can say it and say it again, and reiteration actually helps. Because as most advertising firms would know, it takes 27 repetitions in public eye before the message even registers. So I don't tire of saying the same things over and over again, so long as it seems to convey the topics from different perspectives. So I'm going to play you a quick animation clip of my billboard in Times Square. So the score that you hear, thank you. And this was actually a crowd-funded initiative, so serious props to every single concerned citizen of the planet who stepped up for this cause and contributed to the campaign and got involved, because without every person, this wouldn't have happened. So there's so many souls involved in realizing these kind of large undertakings for global conservation agendas. The score that you heard for this particular animation was actually acquired from Katie Payne's Elephant Listening Project, which I'm sure most of you know about, but they had actually acquired an accidental recording of a real poaching incident. And this is a composite of about 4 different clips that they gave me, which were about 9-10 minutes long each. And it recorded not just the gunshots that you heard in the very beginning that got down the family that was grazing at that point, but also the sound that you hear, which is like tuck, tuck, that's actually the axe hitting the tusk bone and hacking into the elephant's face. And the groans that you hear after is them still being conscious and alive during this process. So it's really brutal, really barbaric, but how do you get those dialogues across to the average person without being completely repulsive? Because some of these things are so graphic that people are not willing to look at them. And if you're not willing to look at the issue or the problem, you're never going to formulate a solution or be in acceptance of the realities we're currently confronted by. So I kind of find ways in which I can communicate really difficult to look at topics in a pleasing manner, but it still conveys what is happening out there. So this is still graphic. I mean, this shows bloodshed, it shows the gunshot wounds, and it also has the oral landscape, so you hear the sounds of what the death sounds like. But it doesn't show it in the same way that possibly a film would, which many people would be averse to look at. So, and I think one of the reasons why I do what I do is also because when I wake up, there's no other choice. I feel responsible personally for everything that's happening in this world, and I know it's not up to me to shoulder the burden of the planet, but honestly, it is upon each and every one of us to feel that way when we wake up. We are responsible for the whole planet, which involves every single living organism on it. And so how do you say no? Like I wake up and I'm like, I don't know which campaign to say yes to. I'm enrolled with rhinos in the morning, and then I'm up in the afternoon brainstorming for a way to deal with plastics, and then it's global warming, and then it's just one thing after another. So my schedule currently is literally 24/7. I barely sleep. I work Sundays, and I never thought I would ever have enough passion for any career path in my life that I would be willing to stay up these hours for, but I found something. And I think every one of us in this room should find that one thing that keeps us up and makes us want to do the next thing to advance the whole movement, because that's why we're all here by the end of the day. So these were the 2 campaigns that I initially started the whole year with, and WILD10 finally picked it up, and this is going to be in Shanghai soon, on subway posters, billboards, print ads. And so I furthered that narrative. And so since the previous slide shows you elephants and rhinos, the count of them in the tusk and the horn, I took it a step further and showed the weapons that are used and the weapons trade and the crime that fuels and the terrorism that is tied into the whole poaching incidents that you see, which is why the Westgate incident happened in Kenya. So I try to find ways in which I can relate all the news that I assimilate, all the information I'm acquiring, tidbits from every corner, and bring it all into a single image so that it conveys as much as possible to the average person who has never seen this issue before and possibly will not be interested unless this really gets a hold of them in that moment. And this is another campaign I created. I'm very careful not to be extremely aggressive to the point where you offend people or point fingers and blame them, because every one of us, when put in the context, it could bring out that behavior in us, so we could just as easily be that poacher who is in a dire situation and needs to kill in order to be able to fund his family. So we have to have empathy and compassion for one another and realize we're all in this together and we're trying to come to a common consensus. So I never create campaigns that are going to target in a very blatant manner where it puts people down or separates us from one another. And this was just to show, a different perspective to the Chinese demographic as we were running these campaigns in China, that the pandas of Africa should have the same merit that the Chinese reserve for pandas in China. And, to show it in a way where it's not because I had several pictures sent to me where they were like, why don't we have a Maasai warrior carrying a beheaded panda? But that's not the solution. Like, do not create more violence and perpetuate that violence to show why we shouldn't be being in a state of violence somewhere else, you know? So it's a matter of being more approachable and peaceable in your solutions. This was another one I presented with rhinos having the same, you know, impact of being pandas of Africa. And so I literally see the wild everywhere. It's with me 24/7, as I said before. So this was actually, when I was in the loo, I saw a tile outside my door, and it had tree rings in one of the tiles, and it looked like the shape of a rhino because I hadn't mopped up a paint streak on the floor. And then I started sketching out an idea because I remembered my earliest memory with nature was actually in the British Museum of Natural History, where I'd seen the tree ring, you know, the sequoia. And chronologically, this particular tree ring was a seedling in 557, and it has seen the rise of Islam, it has seen the spread of Christianity, it has seen the birth and death of various famous figures, including Gandhi. And this is nature, you know, it's all-encompassing. So much of our lives are tied into a single tree. And it's shocking to see that we do not understand how tied in we all are, and how we assimilate its story as much as it assimilates our story. And so in saving it, we're also saving ourselves, and vice versa. So then furthering that campaign, I wanted to create, you know, geological time within different species and show how we were basically breaking records of time in other beings and in ourselves by destroying wildlife. So this is actually a rhino with a tree ring imposed into it. And then I further juxtaposed that, and this is the campaign you see upstairs in the exhibit, where I wanted to show kind of time lapsing in various ways. And I did a lot of research as to, you know, different measures of time. And you have the sand timer on the one horn, which is actually dropping blood instead of sand. And then you have the metronome that keeps track of time, but it's actually an AK-47. And of course, the eye has a clock which has, you know, a second before midnight, because if you've been to the Natural History Museum, you'll know that just a second before midnight is when humanity came onto Earth. You know, if you look at the whole evolutionary clock within 24 hours. And within that second, we've caused all of these changes, and we've had the most impact on the whole planet. And I think it's pretty impressive that, you know, we can have this impact, because it also means we carry the solutions within us to reduce this impact. And these are the campaigns that are created along the same lines. So you have the tusk with burning of the ivory, as well as incense clocks, and the target pendulum, which again keeps track of, you know, elephant populations that are dwindling around the world. And currently we seem to be running on empty, and it is my hope that we move towards energy evolution in more ways than one, seeding an energy economy that is focused on renewables, sustainable development, and ultimately tied into the collective, which involves all wildlife as well as all of ourselves in it. And these are the campaigns. So this whole year has just been different ways of saying the same story, as I mentioned before. So this was the one that I did for Burn the Ivory for the Tanzanian stockpiles. This was done for China, for Joyce Bull's Elephant Voices, and that actually spells China in Chinese. It's the Zongo, those two characters, and I just modified that to incorporate the elephant. And this is powerful when you see the image being carried in marches and protests by young people, and, you know, seeing how that message allows for people to connect to and dialogue with one another, as well as with people who are invested in the conservation campaign. So it just spreads the story as effectively as a Coca-Cola campaign would. And I think it's very important. One of the reasons why my billboard leaves with the question, you know, is it worth it, and does not give an answer, a conclusive statement like don't buy ivory. And this was a lot of debate that went behind this, is because I believe when people are led to the conclusion, it's far more powerful. Like when you can give them a leading question, and it will still give them the answer to themselves, as opposed to us feeding it to them, and that's never going to stick, as well as then having that moment of epiphany where they're like, aha, I got that answer for myself, you know? So it's like, how do I make that happen more often? That's also a challenge of mine. This is yet another campaign I created to show the disintegration of elephant populations in Kenya. This one's up there, people marching with the banner, showing community pride and investment into wildlife, and branding the conservation movement. So I constantly work with different nonprofits to brand their campaigns on the field, so rangers feel the pride and feel connected to one another as well as to the organization that they work for and with. And that helps kind of make the movement have a community around it that strongly identifies with what they do. And it begins to mean more than just that individual, because they feel like they have others who stand by their side, and it's literally about how we can coalesce like that. So once again, campaigns that show how we can come together. And these were actually hands that I composited from everyone who donated towards the Billboard campaign. T-shirts, I mean, different ways to launch the same story and simultaneously, just through cross-branding and marketing efforts and merchandising. So I started doing iPhone cases, iPad cases, and once again, finding environmentally viable solutions for all of this and working with people, purveyors who will be willing to listen to you and channel their products in such a way that it would be more environmentally friendly. So we also have the obligation to turn these products around and not be completely plastics driven. This is the campaign that you see upstairs. It's called Message in a Bottle. Once again, a collaborative undertaking which encompasses various voices within each of the bottles. And the best part about this whole thing is getting youth involved in all of it. And various schools around the world, and especially in the US, have picked up this campaign as satellite installations and have created bottles themselves and dropped their own messages into it and sent bottles to me. In conclusion, I just want to read a really quick poem that I wrote, and just to show you a change of heart and change of mind. And this was written in relation to the Last Exhale project, which was about giving a light to sort of negative space and the absence of wildlife in the world and things that are dying out. Because if we don't mourn what has been lost, we're never going to know what we do have left behind. And I think that's also why shifting baselines is such a huge problem, because people have come to accept that what the world is like right now is okay and that that's normal, and it's not. So here it is. If this were my last, to the wild. If this were my last, then let me hold you close and give you reason to hope without fear and have faith in forever. Let me seed your future and make amends for my past with every moment I note as my present. Could I yearn for anything more and feel right to do so when I know that less allows for the other and more denies us all? My twin soul once told me, all I know to be mine was once yours. If this were my last, I would thank you for a life worth living and do as I have done so others may come to love you as I love you. If this were my last, everything is as it should be, for my end ensures your tomorrow. Like white ocean grains salt all life in the blue, my cells have forever absorbed the silent essence of you. So, if this were my last, I would give you that final exhale too. Thank you.